Victorian Opposition Leader John Pesutto has sought to rally the troops in an address to party members one day after a motion backing expulsion powers he used to expel Maura Deeming succeeded on the floor of State Council. Victorian political reporter Simon Love is live for us at the Liberal State Council in Melbourne. Simon, what was Mr Pesutto's focus?
Well, Janie, John Pesutto wants to move the party beyond the controversies that it has seen since he gained the top parliamentary job after last November's state election, where the party under Matthew Guy was heavily defeated at the state ballot box. John Pesutto says he claims that the party could win an extra 30 seats if the results in the recent Warrandyte by-election were replicated across the state. But that's a very hard task, particularly when there are still internal tensions within the Liberal Party. Take a listen to some members who decided to interrupt proceedings when Mr Pesutto addressed the forum and also was given a vote of thanks.
Shame! Order. Just order. If you've got something to say, please go outside. Thank you.
John Pesutto, my friends, is the real deal. He's authentic, he's genuine, and he's a man of substance.
Now, the backdrop to this is that on Saturday, while Maura Deeming, a Liberal member and also a member that was expelled from the parliamentary party room after her attendance at a Let Women Speak rally earlier in the year that was hijacked by neo-Nazis, John Pesutto then claimed that Mrs Deeming and associates were associated with neo-Nazis. It's the subject of legal concerns notices at the moment. But John Pesutto yesterday had a bit of a win because there was a vote that ultimately would have taken expulsion powers away from party leadership, maintaining rights for all parliamentary members to maintain their status in the party room. That motion was defeated 85% to 15%, is my understanding. John Pesutto denies that there are any rifts within the party. He says that things are healing within the Victorian Liberal Party and his job is to try and get them in a good position for the November 2026 state election.
We've moved on and we've turned the corner. We know we've got a lot of work to do. The membership in their wisdom and the multitude of members who vote on these things, will normally arrive at the right decision on these things. And I expected that vote would go down, and so I wasn't here yesterday to see that, but it had been my expectation that the vote would go down. And we're focused on moving on.
Mr Pesutto tried to make a feature in his speech to call on the Albanese government to expand the COVID inquiry that was called this week to include the unilateral decisions by state governments, obviously with that in mind, that Melburnians endured some of the most toughest lockdowns in the world. John Pesutto believes that the terms of reference should be expanded, and he's pledged to potentially write to the Prime Minister about this.
If the Prime Minister wants to hold a proper inquiry into COVID, he must do it now, of course, before too much more time passes. But he must involve the states, where most of those powers were exercised.
Federal Liberal leader Peter Dutton addressed the Liberal State Council in Victoria on Saturday, and he tried to put the heat on the Andrews government over its decisions during the COVID-19 pandemic and urged the Albanese government to do the same. But Daniel Andrews this morning, speaking not too far away from the Liberal State Council conference at a housing project, he essentially said that he doesn't really care about what the Federal Opposition Leader thinks.
I don't think a lot about Mr Dutton, really, but I would just say this is great to see him in Melbourne. I'm sure he needed a map to find us, and I do hope he felt safe, given he's had some choice, ill-informed, quite idiotic commentary about Melbourne over the years, actually. But he's always welcome. I'm not really here to talk about what he said at a Liberal Party State Council, But did they walk out on him too, or do they only reserve that for their state leaders?
We'll have to see today.
We'll have to wait and see.
A reference there to Peter Dutton's past comments during the 2018 state election campaign, where he was concerned about safety in Melbourne. But it seems that Peter Dutton's keen to try and rally the Victorian Liberal Party, much like John Pesutto attempted to do this morning at the State Council.
Simon Love, appreciate the update live in Melbourne. The Victorian government has sought to dismiss criticism of its landmark decision to abolish, demolish and rebuild public housing towers. Housing experts are questioning why the government isn't refurbishing the existing high-rises in a more cost-effective move. Residents living in the 44 towers across Melbourne will be relocated while the sites are rebuilt. Premier Daniel Andrews believes rebuilding the sites as a mix of social and affordable housing represents the best value for money.
I really can't quite fathom why some people, commentators, are opposed to replacing housing that doesn't meet any standards and is decades and decades old with something new that's bright and safe and fit for purpose and can be home to 30,000 people instead of being home to 10,000 people. What's to oppose with that?